Quilt people of 2020, here we are. Another little lesson here. I'm excited about this one. We are going to be focusing on some really cool threads. Now, I kind of call them monofilament threads, but some of them are technically not. Okay, so the only one that really actually is monofilament, meaning, one thread, is this invisible, right? Invisible thread. And I do not know how I'm going to do a video tutorial on invisible thread and help you all see it. Like, I was thinking, that's a problem. How do I show the invisible thread on a project where you all can see it? I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but we will, and it'll be awesome. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that, and then a bunch of other threads, which we'll get to in a second. But I just kind of wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are with the project, and I also wanted to address the little thing that happened yesterday, because I think it's super interesting and worth looking into, right? So when I was speaking yesterday, and I mentioned the autistic community and how I could somehow relate to them, right? And some of what they experience and some of their struggles. I was really trying to bring them into the fold, right? And I think that it's a little. I don't know. I think we've kind of missed the mark on some of these things in not bringing along not only our autistic community, but also all of our friends with Down syndrome. And so I'm actually working on a big project to incorporate those folks into the crafting world. And I can't share it with you now, but it's super, super, super exciting, right? And so that was the first thing I wanted to mention. And I kind of offended a lady, which is totally fine. I get it. We all come to the conversation with our own past, which often includes past hurt, right? And that's totally fine. I appreciate what she had to say, but what I think we could maybe do a better job of is learning how to be offended like an adult. I think a lot of the times in this society, especially right now that we're living in, we have lost the ability to be offended and still see humanity in the other person, right? That lady, maybe she thought I was just a bad person. And I'm not, you know what? I'm not going to use that example because I don't think that she meant that. Sometimes when we, especially online and things like this, we default to that person's a jerk, that person's a racist, that person's whatever, and just write them off as a terrible person. So let's take that example, and let's say, I probably offend somebody every time I turn this camera on. Let's be honest. But, I'm totally used to that, and I appreciate the feedback, and also an opportunity to talk about this just for a second, because I think it's super important of just what we're all going through, of learning how to be offended like an adult. Okay, so that means, like I said, remaining compassionate, right? And seeing the humanity in the other person who's being offensive. Because when somebody's being offensive, they sometimes aren't aware of it, or they sometimes haven't learned how to do better, right? And so I think that we could maybe see that as an opportunity to help them on their journey. Like that lady, she was offended by what I said about autism, and that is great. And so I reached back out to her and I said, how can I do better? Let's continue this conversation. How can I learn to be better, right? And I think there's more of us than not who say offensive things that are on that side of the fence. Now, that doesn't excuse any type of racism, homophobia, prejudice, or anything of that sort. That's different, okay? Because that's not just offensive, that's hate speech, okay? And that's never okay, and that's never acceptable, and that needs to be confronted to their face every single time. People, you do not get to let your friends, family, whomever get away with that. You don't. That ends. That we're done with that. And so, I find when I'm confronted with somebody who's either saying something homophobic or racist, and sometimes we don't know what to say, what I found for me that really works is just to say to them, that was unloving. And just leave it at that. And it's not, I don't think, personally, attacking. It's not saying, you're a jerk. It's like, that was unloving. And that helps, I think, I hope, some people to stop and take a pause and they're like, you're right, that was unloving. So I think we could be doing better around those things that are, racism and prejudice by shutting that down to their face each and every time. That's where we are. That's what we need, okay, when it comes to that, because the minority communities, let me tell you, are sick of it. So we need to be doing better along those lines, but then also back to the conversation about how to be offended like an adult, right? And so I reached out to her and I'm like, how can I do better? Because, the autistic community and kids with Down syndrome and things are very front of mind. Oh my goodness. Have you watched that show, Love on the Spectrum? It is my favorite show. If you want to believe in the humanity, right, of all of us and the goodness in people, and if you just really need that shot right now of really being reaffirmed by who we are as people, watch Love on the Spectrum. Oh my gosh, it's so touching and so endearing, and these people are just so lovely, and it just warms your heart, right? Because they're all going on dates, like these people with autism, and how they interact and their relationships, and they really want love in their life, and it's just, oh my gosh, just very touching. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that. So, again, being offended like an adult, you can still continue to see the humanity in the other person, right? And you can help bring them along, right? You don't have to just cut them off as they're a terrible person, they're awful, because again, more often than not, there's someone like me who's just on their journey trying to learn, right? And so if we can be mindful of that, right? So how do we escape the moment, the flash moment of being offended, right? And it's really, really simple. If you get that trigger of that flash of rage when you're offended, somebody's saying something really offensive, for me, if I can observe that rather than be in that, then I have enough distance from the triggering moment to be able to give myself a second to catch my breath and not go to a default reaction, which is already pre-programmed in me. I then have options. I then have options to either confront them in a confrontational manner, or I have the opportunity to begin a conversation that maybe helps bring them along. I don't know, maybe something to think about. So I hope that we can learn how to do that, right? Especially in today's society. I think it's very, 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 very important. Don't lose sight of others people's humanity. And this is something that I believe in so strongly because we can do it. We can do anything, right? And so this is, I think, our moment to do this. And so we're going to keep working on this and wanted to bring you along on the project overall. Right? So the tree is pre-quilted, and I'll show you a close-up of that so you can kind of start to see the faces in the tree kind of peering through. And I love that the trees, I don't know if you notice, have motherboard roots. Right? So a motherboard is the part of the computer, right, that has all the wiring in it, right? And so you can see, now, obviously they're just kind of hanging there because I haven't put the foreground on yet, which I will do. But in order to, keep the project going and to be able to pre-quilt it and get it through the machine much more easily, I dropped off that heavy part that was really kind of dragging the whole thing down. So the one tree's pre-quilted. I'm not going to pre-quilt that tree. The other thing I did with this tree is I ran a zigzag stitch around the entire perimeter, right? That took a minute. But so all of this has a zigzag stitch on it, which gives me the opportunity to provide more information on a certain subject, which then brings it to the forefront of the image. Got it? Right? So, because when we look at things in a kind of, distance, horizon kind of aspect properties to an image, the things that are in the foreground have much more information, have much more clarity and detail, right? And then as things fade into the background, they have less information and they often turn a little more blue. That's just our atmosphere, right? And so that's how I'm working with this to have as much information as I can on the big tree, thus bringing it forward, right? And then less information on things like this, which allow it to recess behind. So just adding that little zigzag stitch around this tree has really given it much more information and has brought it to the forefront of the imagery. I think that's cool. Okay. So what we're going to be working on today is, sorry about that. Had a real estate call that I had to take, but that's totally fine. So along those lines, I've been really kind of putting it out there, and I have to be really super careful because I find that like my superpower, if you will, is to manifest things, right, as I kind of want them to be, and that takes your own personal practice, but for me, it's just like whatever I've really set my sights on, I've been able to achieve, right, and so I have to be really careful when I'm putting it out there that, I want to retire from real estate. I want to retire from real estate, of how that may show up, because I might accidentally like just, drop a big F-bomb. Actually, an F-bomb is something else. Okay. Drop a big bomb on my career, right? And then it's over, and I haven't clarified, like, with the universe, like, what I actually wanted that to look like, or maybe that I wanted a replacement for my real estate career. Oops, clarity is good. So I have to be really careful that I'm not just like, oh, real estate, forget it, I hate it. And I don't want to do it anymore, to replace that thought with, real estate, I would like to segue out of that into a new opportunity. Hopefully this. Come on, let's make it happen, folks. Just because I think that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's all. So, anyhow, I got sidetracked there, See, like, that's, again, tangent thought. They just flow through. I'm like, what's going on here? It's a journey. Okay, back to this. I was going to talk about how John sometimes interrupts me, and I get really mad because I told him that, like, I don't have the type of brain that you can interrupt and just expect me to go back to what I'm doing. Like, you throw me off, it takes me a good 20 minutes to get back to where I was before you interrupted me. I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but anyhow. Back to the project. So, yes, so we're done with that. We're going to be working on the skyweb today. And the first thing I'm going to do is kind of identify, just by trial and practice, right, on some scraps, of what it's going to look like when I do certain work, and what stitch do I want to go into the skyweb. Because again, like I've talked about, my intention for that, and this is what we're going to be looking at, the different types of threads and how they react, and how much, kind of shimmer, right, that they're adding. So I have the invisible thread, which actually does provide some, reflection to it. But then I also have some opalescent and some other types that I'm going to be looking at to see what might give it the kind of... now I really hesitate to use the word sparkle, right? That's too much. Like, we're not going all the way to sparkle, right? It's not jazzy. I'm super gay, but I'm not that gay. The whole audience went, really? No. All right, so we're going to be looking at, first of all, just testing the thread to see what I actually want to use on this thing. And then I'm going to be looking at different techniques, because I do want to pre-quilt some of this, right? And get that, whatever I'm going to use, whether it's opalescent or whatever, a little bit on here, right? So that it's not just all quilted, because I don't want to have the impression of quilting, right, of the 3D effect that you get with quilting on some of this. I just want it laying on the surface, right? So that's why we're going to be pre-quilting it. And then, yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to be doing today, right? Is just looking at some of these interesting threads that I think are cool and how we're going to add some, shimmer and shine into the background without it being distracting, but also bringing some, new kind of, vibe to the work itself. Okay, because I'm really clear on what I want. I'm just not quite sure how I'm going to get there. But let's all go on the journey. Why don't we? We'll figure it out together. No, but really, I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be fun. And then, if I get this done, it'll probably take me 2 days. Who am I kidding? Once I have that done, then we're going to be looking at the bubble jet set, which is around here somewhere. And we're going to be looking at doing the goose, right? Which is going to be going up in this corner here, right? And the leaves that are kind of going to be going from, sure I don't step on a dog, here kind of into here. I did post images of those both on Instagram and Facebook. I hope that you had an opportunity to see those because I'm really proud of that. And while the goose is an important element because the Canadian goose for me in this imagery represents hope, right? Because the rest of it is pretty ominous, right? But I wanted to balance that whole vibe with the other, right? This ominous journey that we're all on with COVID and just the chaos and everything that we're in right now with some of that. So that's going to be up in the upper right hand corner. I'm not sure of the colorway that I'm going to be using. I used blue in some of the imagery, but it might be too stark. It might be too much contrast. It might draw too much attention to itself. So I might turn that down. A little bit, because again, I don't want the goose to be the first thing that you see when you walk up to it. Okay, I really want the void, the white, the red, and the yellow to be the primary focus point of what your eye sees and focuses on when you first walk up to it. Okay, so that's that. And then the leaves, oh, if you saw that, I feel really, really, really happy with that. Again, my leaves are going to be just blowing in the wind, and they all have the faces of so many of the people that we have lost during this time of Black Lives Matter and that whole movement, because I want to honor our Black community and let them know they're loved, they're important, and that we could be doing better. Okay, so let's start looking at some thread. Okay, so we're going to start working with the invisible thread first. Again, I have no idea how I'm going to do this so that you can actually see it. Why? Because it's invisible. So anyhow, let's start at the beginning here. I always keep a very, very firm hold on all of it until I get the sewing started. Because, as you can imagine, it's really an interesting process to work with invisible thread. It is its own unique skill set, I believe. So, what I'm going to be testing here is mostly a zigzag stitch. So let me put it on that and get to the adjustments that I like. What do I do? 360. Okay. Actually, 350 is better. Okay, so let me just raise this up and find out. So I made this, which kind of replicates the sky web itself in order to see how it's going to read both on yellow and orange. Okay, so let me get going with this zigzag stitch here. It's not exactly where I want it. There we go. Okay, let's see what that looks like and what I'm getting off of that. You know what, I want to do one more thing while I have this in here, is just do a long straight stitch. And let me... Okay, let's bump this way up. Get this out of the way. Okay, let's see how this looks. Again, it's hard to see, so that's what I thought. Ah! Hold on, operator error. Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to look at this up close. I don't know if you can see it or not, but here's the, hello, get it focused. Here's the zigzag stitch here. And again, I don't know if you're seeing it or not. I'll do my best to kind of put some different light on it, see, and then the straight stitch here. So how do I like this? How do I feel about it? Well, I don't think it's quite enough for what I want, so I'm going to change out the top thread to something a little more shiny, right? So I'm going to go with kind of the more opalescent. Okay, so next I'm going to be working with either the metallic, right, which is pretty jazzy, or, wait, one of them is opalescent, but they both say metallic. One of them is more opalescent than the other. Anyhow, so these are the next two I'm going to be working with. One is this, right, and the other is this. Focus your eyeballs. Anyhow, so I'm going to be trying these out, just different opalescent threads that are from different companies to see how that works. Okay, I have done the second one. You can see how this opalescent thread here, right, is really showing up as white on the orange. So that doesn't work for me, right? The transparent you can see here, and it actually is giving me, when I do a really dense, right, really close, tight zigzag, it's giving me almost as much shimmer as I want. Whereas it, I mean, it kind of works on the straight stitch, but I'm kind of liking the opalescent better. So, you know, on the orange, I may go through with the transparent, and then on the white, I may go with the opalescent. But let me try the other brand. I am going to do my best here to try and show this to you, but again, because it's invisible thread, I don't know how much the camera is picking up. So I'm doing it under the light of the machine here. Hopefully that will work, and we can see. So again, the invisible thread is here in a very tight zigzag. Again, I like that on the orange. The other two, the opalescent ones, are not giving me what I want. All right, they're showing up as white on the orange, and that's no bueno. So we look at just the straight stitch. Right, and this is the invisible one trucking on down here. All right, don't know if you can see that. I hope you can. And in certain light, it gives me a little bit of shimmer, right? And so I want to think about that versus the other two opalescent and how that works, right? So invisible, opalescent number 1, opalescent number 2, and how that's going to work and whether I like those or not and where I'm going to use them. I think what I'm going to do is use just the invisible on the orange. And then when I get to kind of the plain white fields, right, of the background, I'll probably use some of this opalescent, but very sparingly. Then I almost forgot. I bought this really cool kind of gradient thread just to kind of see how that would work as well. So I'm going to give that a roll. All right, let's see here. This gradient thread on a zigzag looks kind of terrible. It's just too much, right? You can see that it's showing up here kind of white. That's no good. However, look, on when I do a straight stitch along the perimeter, again, I'm hoping that you're seeing this, that this straight stitch here, right, kind of comes in and out of being seen, which is kind of the look that I'm going for. While it's not shimmer, it is adding additional dimension to the work, right? And giving me a little bit of that coming and going impression. And again, while it's not done with shimmer and shine, it is kind of creating the effect that I want. So I'm going to play around a little bit with, now that I know that, right, I've done my test, so I'm going to work with the gradient thread and the invisible thread on the orange, and then in the white, I'm going to be using and playing with both the invisible and the opalescent. Okay. Again, I apologize if you can't really see what I'm doing because it's really difficult working with invisible thread to show that on camera. But I hope that you get the general gist of it and you are inspired to work with different threads, maybe some that you haven't worked with before. There's so many out there that I think are super interesting that I've been wanting to use, so this is a perfect project for that. I'm going to be taking probably the next 2 days or so to work with what I've just kind of discovered and what's working on the actual colors and what I think is going to work in the work itself. And then we'll be back after that. We'll be doing the bubble jet set. Now, I did do a tutorial on this like 100 years ago. On those early videos of mine, it's so funny. Like, I'm all uptight and like 12. Okay, this is what we're going to do. One of the joys of getting older. You just don't care. Do what you want to. Whatever. I'll see you next time. Bye.